Hi, welcome to the Stitch TV show. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Pam. We're happy you're joining us today. The Stitch is an online quilt talk show, the perfect soundtrack for your sewing room. Join us for twice monthly talk shows, virtual stitch-ins, book clubs, and even tutorial videos. You can learn more at thestitchtvshow.com.
Our show today is brought to you by our friends at EnMart and QT Fabrics, and you can learn more about them in the links in the show notes.
So we have another new bundle, which is called Lynn's Quilting Bundle. It's good times.
It's lots of orange.
It's orange, orange, and then a different orange.
Well, it's got some gray and taupes in there, and it's also got
a mellow melon.
A mellow melon.
Which is their name, but it's like a yellowish.
Yeah. So it's for the warmer side, and I do use these colors to quilt with. I just quilted a quilt with one of these lighter yellows, and the whole quilt's that. So, yeah. I think that quilts are more exciting when you have more than just expected colors, I think.
Yeah.
So
the fabric postcard bundle has a lot of good variety ones that are just, bright colors.
That I used in postcards,
More orange, green, blue, purple, all that good stuff.
Good.
And they look lovely with the QT fabrics.
They do. And again, the digital print just gives you more depth, I think, than some of the other prints. So just a really neat. And it's Radiance by Dan Morrison.
Just Morris.
Morris. Yep. I'm just making stuff up. That's kind of how I roll. Anyway. Just so you know, when you talk to me, just in your head, you can go, is she making stuff up? The answer is yes, usually.
What I learned in grad school is you can say anything with confidence and good graphics and people will believe you.
That's true. And that's true. And have a good story about it.
There you go. A narrative.
There you go.
Speaking of narrative, what are we going to be talking about today?
So today we're going to be talking about quilting hacks and shortcuts and some tips for using quilting to enhance your quilts. We're joined by the Droid Quilt, which is now available as a video class at learn.thestitchtvshow.com, just in time to celebrate the last Skywalker.
Period. The last one ever. So if you watch this when it drops, when
else are they going to watch it?
Well, a year into the future.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking they don't have secret Batcave ways into our...
We might get hacked.
We're talking about quilting hacks. Okay. In the future, yes.
In the future.
When it drops.
So then it will already have been out, and there you go. But
yes,
the Star Wars movie drops around December.
And we're both excited about it. We went to see the last one together.
Yes.
With our quilts.
Yes.
I brought my Droid quilt. She brought her Droid quilt. And we were Droid.
I took a day off from work because I was just like, I'm doing it.
And she was like, I'm going to go to this by myself. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm going too. So that's what happened.
And then I went and saw it again with my family.
Everybody, oh yeah, my husband wasn't happy either that I went without him. And then everybody was totally jealous of us.
With our quilts?
With our quilts. They're like, where did you get that?
So the pattern's been available for a while, but now there's a video class to go with because, it's some funky shapes happening with these blocks. And it's only, 4 blocks?
5, I think.
5. One of those blocks just maybe like piece of fabric. So it goes together relatively quickly once you get in the groove of repeating. But yeah, it's a fun quilt. It's one of my favorites.
I love it. It's a great quilt. And I have taken it to multiple. I think if you go to the movies, especially if you have the movies where they have the recliner and the whatever, take a quilt. I'm just saying.
Yes.
You're going to, then you get cuddled up. It's like, it's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so our first topic, quilting hacks and shortcuts.
That is our first topic.
So I confess, when I put this topic out there, in my head was a friend of mine online that I met through the podcast. It was like, I really hate when people call stuff hacks when it's really just tips. So y'all, it's tips, but we're calling it hacks because 2019.
Okay.
So your first quilting hack, because I figure we can alternate.
Double stick tape. That's my first
How is
quilting
that
hat.
double stick?
I'm sorry, this isn't double stick. This is painter's tape.
Thank you.
Double stick tape's on here. My first quilting hack is painter's tape. And I use it to measure a couple of things with my sewing machine. If you want to make sure your 1/4 inch seam is going to stay all the way down, you want to stack a few stacks of this and then tape it down to the bed of your machine right at that 1/4 inch. That way when your fabric rides up against this, it will do that. The other way is if you put this tape right in front of your needle, in the middle where your needle normally stands, and then you take a ruler and use a Sharpie marker or a pen, not that will rub off on your fabric, and you mark that where that is straight down from the needle. Then when you're doing
sew and flip,
you can push that fabric underneath it, keeping the point of your square right on that line so that it always stays straight. And then I use it to tape down various things. You know, this is a staple in my quilting. Not only go bag where if I go teach or whatever, I always have painter's tape with me.
That's what I use to tape down the backing when I'm basting. Which you don't have to do because you have a long arm, but
that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, when you're doing improv piecing or design, you want to tape off an area on your design wall, and it allows you to close in that specific area to see it, and also allows you to measure things. Like if you want this random square to be far away from these other squares, it allows you to measure how far it'll be to the edge, and this just tapes off that area, and it gives you, I think that's useful too. I use this all the time.
Cool.
That's my painter's tape. Okay.
My number 1 was chain piecing.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Which is just stitch your first set of squares, usually in my case, first set of squares together or half square triangle pieces, and just keep feeding the next one through with maybe a 1/4 inch of thread. So it's not going to hurt your machine to just keep stitching a little bit until you get your next, set of pieces in there. Yep. And then if you get in the habit of doing it and you end up doing 20 at a time, then it's very easy to count how many sets you've got left to do. Because for me, it's like a mental tally of got 20 done, get 20 more done. I need to make 100. I only have to do this 2 more times. Hooray. Because doing it 2 more times is a lot less intimidating than doing it 40 more times, which is 2 times 20. So
I never think like that. She says stuff like this, and I think, wow, I'm amazed at your brain. I really am. Because I never calculate stuff like that. So
yeah, and then it's easy to take like the little chain of stuff over to the pressing table and press everything open, and then come in and clip the threads to separate it all.
Oh, I clip them all first, and then I go press them.
Like,
I may do it that way now, because I totally clip them all first, and then take a pile.
Then you got to go lay them all out again. Already laid out in a nice little chain. Bam, hacked it.
That's a good idea. That's legit a good idea. Okay. Double stick tape.
What's that for?
Use. I put it on the backs of my rulers so that when I'm, especially templates, like if you're cutting on curves or if you put the double stick tape, it just holds it down just enough that it won't move underneath your ruler. So I use double stick tape a lot. And what's nice about it is you can peel it if it comes less
it's linty
or whatever, and it will. Take it off. Just put another little piece of double stick tape on it and keep going. I also know people who use this, and I don't like this method, but I've seen people do it and teach it, is they take double stick tape and they put it on the edge of their quilt when they're ready to do binding. And then they put the binding on top of that and then sew through the double stick tape and pull it out. I'm not loving that idea, but I was in a class where that was taught. And literally, She had
Sticks to each
like,
itself.
she had like 60 inches that she would pull off. Not my favorite, but if you were looking to put binding very specifically placed, I can see where that would work. Although I think running a bead of glue would work too. So, glue.
Glue.
That's a good one. I didn't even write that one down. Did you put glue down?
No.
Okay. Glue, then let's say glue. Glue's good.
Washable school glue.
Yes. Both the stick kind and the like white
the white
kind.
liquid kind, yeah.
Both. I use them for different
Yeah.
things, but I use that a lot.
Yep.
Notice we're only using sticky stuff. Everything sticky. Tape, double stick tape, glue. It's all sticky.
You're all sticky stuff.
Okay,
Mine
go ahead.
wasn't sticky. Mine was chain piecing.
All right, yours is good.
My next thing's also about strings. I'm into long, stringy things. You're into sticky things.
Strings. What do you mean strings?
So strings in quilting are referred to as scraps of fabric that are long and skinny. And sometimes they're leftover binding pieces, or when you trim the back of a quilt and you've got a long strip left. And I typically cut mine down and do a scrappy binding on various quilts. And this is kind of a sub-hack of the larger, like, strings. Use them. Subheading, scrappy binding. Because, and I would say not shorter than 8 inches, just because the joining of it gets a little wonky when you've got so short a piece that you're trying to join together. So that's the first thing of scrappy binding is a thing, and it's delightful, especially for kids, because it turns into like this little bit of an I Spy thing around the very edge of the quilt. But the other thing that strings are useful for, I use them a lot when I'm making placemat gifts. And it's quilting and piecing at the same time, because you get your piece of batting, the size probably about 2 inches bigger all around than the size placemat you want. And you start laying out your strings, and you kind of figure out ahead of time like where they're going to fit, or throw caution to the wind and don't do that.
That would be my
But you pick a starting string and you kind of lay it on a jaunty angle, which is somewhere between 30 and 45 degrees. But your level of jauntiness may vary.
Jaunty's just jaunty. There's
depends.
No degrees.
Depends on, honestly, how long your first strip is. And you just kind of like set it down on the actual batting piece.
So it's foundation piecing is what you're doing.
Yes, onto
with
the batting. And then you take your next string and you put it right sides together and you stitch down that side through both pieces of fabric and the batting. And then you flip it and then you press that down. And then you repeat that whole like sewing and flipping until you get the piece of batting filled up. And then, because you're like, wait, where's the back? You get your back piece of fabric and you put it right sides together, and you're going to do an envelope method, which is get your backing fabric, like the size plus seam allowance that you want. I do a 1/4 inch seam. So if you want your placemat to be 13 by 15, your backing fabric will be 13.5 by 15.5. And then you stitch all the way around, leaving an opening of about 4 to 6 inches. And then you trim all the batting and the excess strings and all that stuff off, and then you turn it right side out. You can clip the corners if you want, or you can just, bodge it. And use like a turning tool or
bamboo skewer.
A bamboo skewer is helpful to kind of poke out the corners, press it, and then just stitch all the way around the edge, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and now you've made a placemat. And you didn't have to go in and do fancy quilting, like you got the piecing and the quilting done at the same time.
Yes.
But strings are also handy for just foundation piecing blocks. Spiderweb quilts use this a lot. And the foundation fabric doesn't have to be like muslin. It can be leftover ugly fabric. It could be just random other stuff. So strings are one of those things that drive me nuts, and I seem to collect them quite a lot. And then I'll go through phases where I'm like, I need to use all these strings. They're driving me bananas. I'm at that place now. Only with the cool colors.
Those doesn't bother me at all.
Ugh. Well, because of how I store mine, I'm like, this segment is full. I need to use these.
I never think that, ever.
Okay, next.
Vodka.
It's legit.
It's a legit hack.
It's no purse whiskey, but it's a hack.
Vodka, you can use vodka to make starch. It has to be potato vodka. It can't be made from other things. And I don't remember I know you've done it before, where you take is it a cup of vodka, a cup of water?
It's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. And then use that as your starch instead of spray starch. Or drink it. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I don't use that anymore because I drink it. So I just use starch now.
But it is a hack. You
Yes.
can do it.
If you have vodka laying around
that is potato
and you are
vodka.
out of spray starch, it is a legit substitute.
There you go.
Okay. 8 at a time, half square triangles.
You taught me this, and
Was it magical or did you hate it?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Oh, I think she hated it.
No, I'm not going to answer that question.
She hated it.
She taught me this, and I didn't do it yet, so I can't have an opinion.
So we'll put a link out to a tutorial that explains the math, but basically you're cutting squares that are slightly bigger than double your finished half square triangle size.
That hurts my head.
I know. That's why we're going to link to it instead of trying to go through the math live on air.
Seriously. Double? Oh.
There'll be a link. So on the back of the lightest square, you draw line on each diagonal.
The lightest fabric, maybe not the lightest square.
Oh, but they're squares, so the lightest fabric square?
Yeah.
Okay.
I immediately went, how is a square heavy? I'm my brain. It was my brain. I don't know. You said lightest square, and I was like, how heavy is a square in my brain? The lightest fabric is what you meant.
It's the ratio of a unicorn to a leprechaun.
I agree. That's it. Yes. I
Okay.
think this is spiraling out of control.
So you have those drawn lines. You stitch a 1/4 inch from either side. So you end up with 2 lines of stitching this way and 2 lines this way. And then you go in and you cut on, it's not marked, but you cut exactly on the center, horizontally and vertically. And then you cut on the marked diagonal lines. And then when you go and press all these open, you have ended up with 8 half square triangles. Now you can be exact with the math and be like, I don't have to trim it. You may want to oversize it a bit and then trim it down. If you're going for that level of accuracy, like go crazy. But
Like what I would
that's
do.
like a 8 at a time, 4 lines of stitching, half square triangle method, which is pretty neat.
Yes, I haven't tried it yet. You taught it to me, but I haven't tried it yet, I'll be honest. So that's why I couldn't answer. It wasn't that I hated it. My next one is, and this isn't the one that I think people, is this the one people sent us? I think this is one we had.
I think we were gifted purple buns.
Yes, which I have. They're over there. It's next to my long arm, and this was next to my sewing machine. This
It's pickle picker.
is a pickle picker.
Chaos.
And
What's in here, Lynn? And I feel like it's behind the thing, so
Oh, sorry.
I shall hold it up.
this is the pickle picker. I'm not going to pull it out more than that.
It is legit like pickle storage.
Yes.
That's what it will be known as. But in here is
Mineral oil
for
dipping thread. I legit do this. I use it on my long arm as well as on my sewing machines. When I'm seeing thread breakage or when I'm hearing noise or whatever, I will dip threads and this.
you dip the whole spool.
whole spool. Then I use paper towels to,
Blot.
blot it.
Do not rub.
Do not rub it. And I find that it makes the machine as well as the threads go through the machine easier, and it doesn't leave spots on the quilts, and it oils machines inside the tension discs, and it's my hack. I've done it for years. Legit. Done it for years.
Okay.
So, dipping thread.
All right.
What's your next one?
Paper plates.
As templates,
Nope.
as I don't know.
How long are we going to keep this going?
I don't know. And I'm done. I don't know. What are you using paper plates for?
So
Do I use them?
the quilt we had on the last show, which was all sawtooth star blocks, and it was mix and matched like fabric pieces because there's 2 pieces of fabric in each of the blocks, a background and a foreground.
Right.
in a retreat, when you're transporting from like a cutting table to a sewing table, or even your own sewing room, if your quilting space is kind of spread out,
Right.
you can get your fabrics kind of arranged. Like, oh, I want these two together in this block. Put that in a paper plate. Put another paper plate on top of that. Put your next set together, and then you end up with a stack that is nested. And thus, when you transport from one area to another, you're not just carrying it on like a tray, and you walk like you're Beyonce, and you're making your own wind, and then your pieces go as you walk. That's not cool.
I would say that's not cool. I would agree with this.
Ask me how I know.
And paper plates are cheap and...
Well, they're reusable because you're not getting grease or anything on them.
Right, you're just...
And you just keep a stack. Like,
right.
So that is a nice way to transport.
Or keeping, not only...
Or like when I have to leave it on my sewing table and go do something else, and I know, I mean, the cats might knock it over, but it's not then, 17,000 pieces of fabric that have to, it's like typically they just kind of fall in a clump.
That's a good idea.
I know.
All right.
You got anything else?
Yep. Clips instead of pins. And I'm not saying when you're doing precision piecing, but when you are doing bag making or sewing handles or sewing anything, I know this is used for binding, like people normally put these on when you're hand stitching down binding, but they can be used for so much more. When you're on your sewing machine and you're doing really thick types of sewing, these will hold it all together right before it goes under the needle, and it's very easy to take out. These clips are very useful.
They are clover clips.
Clover clips, yep. Instead of trying to pin, like, especially when you're at that last stage of the bag making and you're trying to hold
all the layers.
All the layers. So you've got two sides of the fabric and
lining,
whatever lining in there.
Stiffening stuff.
And then if you're sewing the handle on, so you've got that. So it could be 7 or 8 pieces of fabric material that is going through your needle. This helps hold that together so that they don't move. So clips instead of pins on thicker things. Yeah.
Okay. Pipe cleaners.
Yep.
Not just for cleaning pipes.
I would clean part of my sewing machine with pipe
Absolutely.
cleaners. Yeah.
Because they're bendy and they get down in there and will pick up the lint.
Yep.
And I have them extensively in my house because I have kids and they use them a lot for crafts. And then they outgrew those crafts and now I have a lot of pipe cleaners. And I'm like, what do I do with all these crazy things? Besides, every once in a while, the cat manages to pull one out and play with it.
Yeah, they're good.
But it's definitely good for getting in and cleaning out linty areas of your sewing machine. I have also used them to clean out the extra fine point that I use on my washable school glue.
Oh, right.
Because it can kind of get down in that tip. Because sometimes just running water doesn't clean it out well enough.
You're right. That's a good tip. Yes, pipe cleaners are good.
Okay.
My last, and this isn't a hack, this is just what I do. But prep your binding absolutely as soon as you are done doing your top. You're already cutting fabric. You've already got that, so prep it then. And then what I do is I roll it up literally on it was in a previous show. It had gold buttons in it. What's the name of the ice cream thing?
Yep. It is the Talenti.
The Talenti jar.
Gelato jar.
The Talenti gelato jar. And I use that jar to roll it up so that it's easy to roll it up. And then I just put a piece of fabric or paper around it. And I say, this is the quilt that this is going to go on. And I put it in a box next to the long arm. So now when it comes off the long arm, I'm grabbing the binding and I'm done. I'm ready to put the binding on. Prep your binding as soon as your top's done. Because then you don't have to worry about, did I use that fabric for another project and now I'm out of binding? And I'm just like, because if it's in that box, it's already binding. So I know everything else in my sewing room is free for use and it's not being saved for to finish the project. That just because, and Pam's not like me, I've got several quilts that I haven't quilted for a long time. And so when they do come up and I go, oh, I want to quilt that now, I don't have to worry about that. I use that fabric for something else. And now I don't have binding.
Whoops.
Oops. So prep it as soon as your quilt top's done. That's my hack.
All right.
And that's just because that's the way my brain works.
My last hack. It's actually a twofer.
Oh, wow. Double points.
Tips for quilting very large quilts on your domestic machine. So,
which I don't do, but
you don't do.
But
many
I
others
can see
out
the
there
need
do.
for it. Yes.
So
I have done it.
you're always faced with this. It's a large quilt. My table is, even if you set out on your dining room table, which is larger typically than a sewing table, two alternatives. One, a little more expensive. I bought dog grooming arms, and they were $35 a piece. I got purple ones, though,
because they're fancy.
And I clipped them on, opposite ends of the table. And then you can get like some photographer clips, or you could use binder clips too if you can attach them to the cording that comes off of it. And you clip that to the outer edges of your quilts, and that helps keep the bulk from falling on the floor, because that extra gravity tension is what makes it hard to keep that quilt moving.
Honestly, that's not a bad idea to have to just put binding on. Because when you're dealing with the quilts, just putting binding on the edge, it would help to have that tension on. I may need to get one.
Now, the other alternative, which works really only if you're at a large table, the dog grooming arm thing works for, any size table. If you get a plant caddy, which is typically like a big flat ring with 4 wheels on it that's used, you put like your big potted plant on it so you can move it around.
Oh, right.
Just get one of those.
Yep.
And you put it on your table, and you kind of pile up your excess quilt like on it. You don't have to strap it down or anything like that. But because it's got wheels,
it's
going to kind of keep it moving for you.
I could see that would be good for not binding, but the dog handles would help with binding, especially when you're doing a king size that wants to fall off the table and you're still trying to, you want it to be going through straight, not kind of doing this pull thing.
Yeah. Or you end up like flinging a lot of it over your shoulder.
Right.
Which is fine if you are in perfect health, but if you are holding too much tension, or you've got shoulder or other mobility issues, that can be a challenge.
Yeah. So that's good.
So there you go. There are some
quilting hacks.
Quilting hacks.
And shortcuts. Now we're going to take a closer look at the droid quilt, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back.
Amazing.
And we're using our next topic is using quilting to enhance your quilts.
Yes. So I intentionally picked this topic to go with the quilt hanging behind us. But also because I think sometimes there's a missed opportunity.
I think, sometimes. And sometimes stuff happens and you're like, how can I justify this?
So for the droid quilt behind us, it's straight line quilted, like straight up and down.
Except for ribbon candy on the orange.
Yes.
Yes.
The version I did is straight up and down. Ain't no ribbon candy, ain't no nothing. But then Lynn also took the opportunity to take orange thread and...
I did ribbon candy on the orange just to give it different texture, but not so take away from the straight up and down. And I didn't, when it was straight up and down for this, one, I did it because it gave it a real linear look, and I wanted that to happen with the quilt. But I also didn't measure anything between the lines. So some of the lines are really close together. Some of them are further apart. Some of them are, it's just a variety of different lengths of straight up and down quilting. And then when I went back and did the ribbon candy, Okay, truth is, this is what happened. I was doing the ribbon. What happened was, this is the truth. I was doing the ribbon candy, and someone either scared me or interrupted me during the quilting. And it wasn't a person, it was a Saluki. And she has a habit when she wants my attention that she comes up and she stands behind me. And remember, I got in earplugs, right? So I don't know what's going on. And then I just feel this scratch on the side of my leg, and it scared me. So I was in the midst of ribbon candy, and this happened. And so that became a choice. It became a choice.
A design choice.
And the design choice was...
Take it out.
Do I have to take this out? And at that point, I was probably on some deadline, which 9 times out of 10
on my spreadsheet
is true. On some deadline, this had to be done. And it was showing the orange off on the gray and the white or cream color. And the immediate thought in my brain was, this is authentic battle damage. So you have a choice of either... So I made it bigger. And I just kept scribbling until I went, oh, that looks good. So then now on most of the oranges, I have authentic battle damage where I go to one edge and I just scribble outside of it. And there it is.
Now, you can be more intentional.
You could.
You don't need
You don't have to have a Saluki.
Find a Saluki and raise a dog. And
yeah.
So some of the other ways that you'll see this played out, like the most common descriptor for this is custom quilting. Like,
Right.
oh, you are doing a specific design inside the piece, or that is purposefully enhancing the piecing that you've already got on your quilt. Now, whole cloth
Right.
quilts are nothing but quilting that has enhanced a quilt
Right,
because
exactly.
it's a piece of fabric.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is really successful is when, particularly in modern quilts, there's a lot of negative space, and you're mimicking a motif from within the quilt in that negative space or the
Right.
background.
Right.
So it could be an applique shape, like, oh, here's a heart that's in my quilt. Now I've quilted other hearts of that same design, and maybe they're different sizes, but they're in other parts of the quilt.
Or they're in other types of motifs. So you can do a heart in a row. So do a heart that's in a straight line. Or you can do a vine with adding hearts to it. Or you can do a heart and then echo it several times and then move on and do a heart to where it looks like more of a type of paisley or meandering kind of thing where the hearts show up on with echoing kind of thing. Or you can do a heart and then add beads on the outside of it and make it more frilly. Or you can do a heart and add, something on the inside of each heart. Or you can do, so you're still using the heart motif, but in different aspects of the quilt, you've changed up that motif enough that it gives you texture.
And dimension and additional interest.
Yeah.
And I think the quilts that we see win ribbons in shows are the ones where the quilting has enhanced the design.
Right.
And then it's not just I had to get it done, and so I just did it all over. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that
Absolutely
many
not.
times.
Pantographs are great.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
And even something like this, where it's like, oh, it's a very simple quilting design. It's straight lines.
And scribbles.
And scribbles. And so it doesn't have to be complicated, but as you're piecing the quilt and you think about what part of this is really special for me and how do you layer that on even more. And maybe it's, oh, this fabric is super fun and my friend loves polka dots. And so in the quilting, then you're like, all right, I'm going to pebble. I'm not going to go crazy because pebbling is quite a commitment to thread. Not that we don't have some for you to buy, but,
right.
You are selective in the area that's used. Once, you don't make yourself crazy, but also so that makes that special.
Well, and then just repeat that pebbling randomly, but be like, I literally just took a quilt off the long arm where I had these big diamond shapes and I was using some pebbling, but I decided in these big diamond shapes I would have great big line of pebbles at the top and bottom, and then I just did 3 strips on each side of pebbles, stringed pearls or string circles that were all along there. And then that made that diamond shape fill out. But I repeated the pebbling in the border in the middle of this weird vine that I made. So then I repeated the pebbling like 2 or 3 different places in the quilt that it was just enough to go, she thought about this. Right? And I think that if you take one element and just find a way to repeat that element, or 1 or 2 elements, you know, blend 2 together, like, you know, some echoing at different places, use a heart, use a diamond, use a triangle, use a
or if you pick
paisley.
2 quilting designs and you're thoughtful about where they're placed.
Right.
Like, oh, this design gets used in the pieces and this other design gets used in all the background.
Right. Or this color, this fabric.
And technically that is custom quilting, and it's not hard to do.
No.
Because it feels very intimidating. You're like, custom quilted. Like, oh no. And there's very detailed, like super tiny, you know, motifs. It doesn't have to be that.
It can,
and I think
but it doesn't.
Yeah. I think it scares a lot of newer quilters when they start thinking of, even experienced quilters are like, oh, I can't do that. But I think when you've got a top, and we have a link to an episode that we've done on, you know, many times, how should I quilt this? And one of the things that we did was, you know, print out your quilt top, and then you have transparency sheet on top of that, and you're just using a dry erase marker to draw on that clear film. And then you don't like it, all right, wipe it off and try something else.
Right, exactly. If you like it, take a picture of it. And then refer to that picture. I take pictures of quilting designs that I'm attracted to, that I want. Just did this. I was planning out a quilt, and I was going through some different resources I have in books, online, and I take a picture of a quilting design motif that I think I want to use. Then they're all kind of gathered together. They're next to me on the long arm to where I can go, oh, this one will look good in this section. And then use that there. So there's lots of ways to enhance your quilts. If you're doing a landscape, think about how the sky's going to look different than the, you know, grass, which looks different than the water. How clouds are going to look different. How trees can look different. How leaves on trees can look different. You know, water can have just a ripple, or it can be very swirly, depending upon, you know, what it's doing. Wind is the same way. And I know you can't see wind, but you can see the effects of wind. You know, sometimes my skies are very serene, and it's a gentle.
And here comes the storm.
And then you're doing really, you know, kind of stuff. So, you know, and think about history too. Like, how was this, if you're looking to enhance a quilt and you're looking at a very traditional pattern, or it's a reproduction of an 1800s quilt. Well, to the piece is really common. So quilting just the orange peel around the flying geese or around the squares, or that's nothing, that is great. So that would enhance that. Now, there is planning when you're doing some of those orange peel kind of stuff.
Yeah, you have to travel around.
And figure out how to get back and stuff.
But again, that's where having a printout of your block, or, you know, if it's a repeating block, and just sketching it out with a pencil or with your finger even. You don't have to commit to ink of any kind.
Right. Pencil is great.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I think if you could get comfortable with basic meander type of designs,
Yeah, like a good set of 4 to 6 different background fillers.
Right.
And then start applying those. Yeah.
I repeat those. And then figure out how you can add another element to that. I did a vine. Okay, now what can you add to that vine? I mean, a heart could look like a grape leaf too.
Yeah. A philodendron leaf. That's how I drew all my philodendron vines.
Okay. Hollies are easy to do. And then you add 3 little circles and it's holly and berries. And that can look great on a holiday or winter type of quilt. And then, of course, easy stuff like, how to draw a pumpkin. Just think back to your kindergarten days when you were like having to draw a pumpkin or having to draw
forced pumpkin sketching.
And add a couple of things in the middle and put a stem on it, and you're done. Done. Children's books, I think, are very inspirational in this.
Yes.
And I think it's cool when you have like this scene and you add something in the quilting that...
It's a new layer.
It's a new layer. Like, yeah.
Like, sure. So...
There's no pumpkins in the quilt, but you've added a pumpkin in the quilting.
As like a scenic element.
As a scenic element. It could be really super cool.
Yeah.
I did that with one of your quilts and write in them. She gave me a quilt to quilt that was... Pam graduated from a university that has a yellow jacket.
Georgia Tech. It's not a secret.
And she gave me this quilt that had all these honeybees in it. So I just drew bees along the quilt. And then I did honey, like beehives. And then I wrote honey on it and bee and, really simple cursive writing. Cursive writing. May be difficult for some.
They do.
I think they're still teaching it, though.
They do in our area.
Someone said we could stump the entire generation by switching to manual transmissions and cursive writing.
Probably.
Like, ooh, that is kind of... Can you drive manual?
If I can get into first, yes. Getting there, literally an uphill battle. A lot of tears.
My favorite car in all the cars that I've ever owned was my 5-speed Honda Accord hatchback. It was awesome. I loved that car. I still like that car. But then you move to Atlanta and you get traffic and no.
Between traffic and hills.
Yeah, no.
I had while I was at Tech, one of my freshman roommates was from Florida and had a manual transmission.
Oh, yeah.
Florida is very flat. And you don't think of our area as particularly hilly, but hilly enough if you're from Florida, apparently, that she's like, I can't even drive this car here. She just too many hills and just stalled out 7 times on the way to the grocery store. So, I mean, do you find it challenging going back to the topic, not cars. Quilting.
Quilting. Do you find it challenging to enhance your quilt?
I think sometimes I get caught in I need to get this done, and I feel like I don't have the time to be thoughtful about that. And somehow, the angst of having to change threads feels like a big deal. It's really not.
You don't have to change
It takes less than a minute to change threads.
And you don't have to change thread to enhance the quilting. I think a rule of thumb is this. If you're just starting out doing this, come up with 3 motifs.
Mm-hmm.
Just 3. And you're going to say, in the background, maybe you're just comfortable with a meander, and that's the largest area. Just use that in the background. Okay? Then treat it, let's say it has a border. Treat your border differently. Purposely treat your border differently. And then find something unique about the blocks that you can do in that area. And then you've got 3 different elements and you've enhanced the quilt and it's not kept you in the pantograph or all over meander. 3 different elements, changed by either the space, changed by either the block, or changed by the color.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
All the orange pieces get this.
Right. All this type of block gets this compared. Like if it's a 2-block quilt, do 1 block in the paisley, whatever, 1 block meander, next block paisley, 1. So then you're changing up every other block. If you want to practice quilt enhancement or practice motifs, one of the things I've done when I was getting better at this is I did a twister quilt. So it had 40 different fabrics in it because it was all from one line of fabric. And it had the same element repeated. I literally bought Leah Day's book, 365, which I still refer to, 365 Quilting Designs. And I bought it online, so I have a digital copy of it. And I just would flip through it till I find one that I liked. And then in that one twister piece that had the same fabric, I did that design. Flip through it, find another design, and then I tried that one. And then I was limited because it wasn't much. And I found that I can at least try it, and it's only this much. I'm not trying to do a king-size quilt. It's only this much. But then every block was different, and by the time I had practiced 40 different, quilting motifs on one quilt, it totally enhanced it. It's totally a cool-looking quilt. I never changed threads, but it allowed me to explore what I liked, what I'll never do again, and and what I have done repetitively because I really like this design in other quilts later. So, and that's super easy to do. And we could link to hers too. I'm sure she has it online still.
She does. All right.
I like this topic. We could talk more. I know. Like, this is a good topic. Let's talk about this.
So do you quilt as you go, or quilt as you've gone on ahead already and planned it? You can leave a comment on our blog or on the YouTube episode or in our Facebook group, What's Up Stitches. And that's all we have for this episode. Today's show is made possible by EnMart and QT Fabrics. Find links to these wonderful companies in the show notes for today's episode.
We'd like to thank 77 Peaches and Big Think Productions for helping to produce The Stitch. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications on YouTube.
Our next virtual stitch-in is Friday, December 13th at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern, broadcast live on our YouTube channel. We're changing up our book club format, so stay tuned for some special broadcasts in that fourth Friday slot.
All those details and more can be found on our website, thestitchtvshow.com, along with links to purchase fan gear, quilt patterns, and video classes. Tune in next time for more quilting chat with friends.